Today's guest absolutely crushed his Rutgers prediction. You're going to want to stick around and hear what he has to say about Penn State.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, Badger fans? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. No matter where I'm at, I'm going to be recording Talking Badgers. Appreciate you being here, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Podcast Network. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. $5 bet gets you $200 in guaranteed bonus bets or at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Go visit the official sportsbook, the Locked On Podcast Network. Let's bring our guy on. We got Curtis. Oh, I teased you up, man. Absolutely crushed the Rutgers prediction. Now I'm going to put pressure on you, but you have some great takes on Penn State. We were talking before the show. Biggest picture take on Penn State. What's your thoughts here?
So it's been an interesting week listening to the national media and the couple Penn State podcasts, suffer through that a little bit, but it's good to hear what the opponents think of you as a program, your team, where they have strengths, where they don't have strengths. Some are more fair than others. Some are more honest than others, like any channel, right? Here's my take on Penn State. I'm going to say this. It's going to make a lot of people angry, and quite frankly, I really don't care. Penn State is not a championship caliber program. They're not this year. They weren't the year before, and they probably won't be next year, as long as James Franklin is their coach. I don't know if we're the team that exposes them this week, because I think we still got a long way to go before we're really where we want to be as a program. You think 3 weeks ago we were down in the dumps. People were talking about fire this, fire that. Now we're doing a lot better. There has been some easier competition for sure. Not trying to say that we're all of a sudden some juggernaut's going to come in and knock Penn State off the throne, but they are not the number 3 best team in the country. I don't even think they're the top 10 team in the country, all things considered, right? I think next week they're probably going to play Penn State or Ohio State. They're going to lose. I think they'll probably drop a game, if not to us, to someone else. If they happen to make the playoffs, they're going to get bounced in the first round. Because I look at this team, and I don't see a serious team. What I see with them is a collection of high-talent individuals that come to Penn State based off star rankings and then underperform routinely over the course of their career there. This has been the story of them since James Franklin's been hired. And I think it's going to continue to be the story of them while he's the coach. And I think this week for us, on the flip side, is an opportunity to show just how far we've come as a program. Because we took over a program, or Luke Fickell took over a program that was struggling, that had issues, that had a lot of things that had to work through from a mindset perspective, from a culture perspective, from an identity perspective. I know that's been a name or word thrown around a lot the last couple of weeks. This is an opportunity for us to see, hey, have we actually improved? Because this team is better than last year's team. This team is better than years like 2022. These guys do play harder than previous teams we've had. Can we take that and parlay it and beat a team that's more talented than us, but I don't think is at a serious championship caliber?
Yeah, you and I talked about this because I want to lead into the next point. There's a physical test here for Penn State. Like this Wisconsin team with this veteran offensive line, the depth on the defensive line, the way we've been playing, the way we've been competing in the trenches. This is a team that was able to run the ball even against Alabama and move it down the field with long sustained drives at points. I don't think they've played a team as physical as we are. And I don't think they've seen a rushing attack as physical that's going to challenge them as consistently as we will. Especially with the way Tyree Walker's been running, especially with what we put together, especially with what Phil Longo's found. What did you see in your numbers kind of diving into the rushing attack, the Penn State defensive line, who they faced and how it might stack up against Wisconsin?
Well, first things first, I wanted to start with the defense because I've heard all week that this is the best defensive line that Wisconsin will have faced all season up until this point. Okay. Based on stats, that's actually incorrect. This would be the third best offensive line we've faced up until this point this season. The number one defensive line being, ironically, the one we just played at Northwestern. I know now, again, right now, Penn State fans are ready to put me up on a stake and light me on fire. How the hell are you saying that our defensive line with Abdul Carter and Devon, I don't even remember his last name, but like all these guys are worse than Northwestern? That's impossible. It can't possibly be. You're out of your mind. And hey, you know what? Based on talent, based on star rankings, you are absolutely correct. 100% not doubting it here. Mm-hmm. But let's go off the actual, stats, right? So when you look at Penn State, they're averaging about 2.33 sacks per game, and they're giving up about 3.2 yards per carry on the ground this year. Okay, that's good for number 2 in the conference and number 1 in the conference, respectively. Again, ironically behind Northwestern. But when you break that down, there's a couple things that go into that, right? Alabama and Northwestern both average 2.43 sacks a game. Penn State averages 2.3. I couldn't find pressures. I know people have talked about, well, they pressure a lot. I don't have PFF. I think it's the only one that really tracks pressure, so I don't really know where the pressure rates are. But I also watched the All-22, so you kind of get a sense of where the pressure is and where it isn't. When you break it down, you think, well, Northwestern, obviously they've played an easier schedule than Penn State. Obviously, Bama is lost a couple games. There's no way they're better. Right? Well, let's break it down. When you look at the strength of the defensive line versus offensive line, you look at the offensive lines that a team like a Northwestern and a Bama have played so far. Northwestern, on average, has played oh my gosh, I wrote this down, and now this is bad podcasting on my part. Yeah, sorry. So Northwestern, on average, has played the 47th best offensive line in terms of allowing sacks. Okay. Bama, on average, has played why can't I find my stuff? Oh my gosh. The 73rd best offensive line. And then you put Penn State in there. Penn State's played the 86th best offensive line. Penn State has 14 sacks on the year. 12 of those sacks came against teams rated 110th or worst in the country in offensive line in pressures allowed grade. 7 of those 12 sacks came against Illinois, who gave up 5 sacks to Purdue. Okay? You want to talk about us not playing anybody. When you sack a team that gives up 5 sacks to Purdue 7 times, congratulations. Do you want a medal? I don't know what that means. That doesn't mean anything to me, especially because it was at Penn State. Like, so again, like, I don't, wait, what? Like, that doesn't show me anything. First of all, Illinois, Nebraska, all those teams, they're overrated. I've said that a million times. Illinois is going to get one in the wood chipper against Oregon this week. That's besides the point. Let's look at yards per carry. Okay. Penn State actually will have the best yards per carry defense at 3.2. Now, Northwestern is at 3.23. Ironically, they were at 2.4 last week. So they were the best run defense up until when we played them. Okay. Fair enough. Well, let's look at this again. Let's look at rushing attacks that they have played. Okay. So on average, Bama, who's at 3.53, again, worse than Penn State, but they're a solid team, I would say, in terms of their interior presence. They played the 63rd best offense in terms of rushing, including last week, number 6 Tennessee, who's the number 6 best rushing team. Northwestern, on average, has played the 76th best rushing team, right? Okay, pretty good. Penn State, on the other hand, has played, on average, the 90th best rushing team, including number 133, UCLA, and number 131, Kent State. So again, you talk to us about like, oh, we haven't played anybody. We just beat Rutgers. We just beat, Northwestern. We just beat Purdue, whatever. Like, again, you haven't played anyone either. And
no point to really quick on that, because I can already see the Penn State person watching this podcast typing furiously away in the keyboard.
Oh, we're gonna get skewered, and it's gonna be awesome.
We play USC, beat them, and you lost to USC. This version,
I got Twitter mentions for the first time when I was talking about USC, and I was right about USC. It just, again, it wasn't us that exposed them, but I was
falling apart.
Spot on with my assessment of them.
But that's what we both said. We said that the sustained play in the Big Ten is going to bring USC down. Mm-hmm. This version of USC is getting worse and worse, and the more Big Ten teams play them, the more they get exposed. Great. It's a win. It's not the banner win you necessarily want to point to. And then they played a West Virginia team who that's a West Virginia team that wants to run the ball, has a good offensive line, but they got behind in that game and they had to go away from their game script. I'm not sure if Penn State for
West
4
Virginia's
quarters,
not a good team either. Full disclosure,
and they're not. And I just don't think they've been challenged for 4 quarters.
Well, like, and I'll give you this. When you look at, again, their the rushing teams that they faced on average, like I said, they played 133, 131. Then they've played the 86th best rushing team in Bowling Green. Penn State fans will remember that game. Wasn't very fun trying to stop that rushing attack. Well, they're 86. USC, I don't know if you remember the game last week. Woody Marks looking like a freaking Doak Walker winner on that game, killing them. Then 81, Illinois. Now, credit to them. They held Illinois down. It was at home. It was a night game. I've watched Bielema my whole life. I'm not that impressed by that. I'm sorry. Like, it's just what it is. Like, I know what those teams are. The actual best rushing team they played is West Virginia. And that was, again, beginning of the year. I think that coach on the hot seat. I'm not really looking at them like that's a real good test. They play in the Big 12, whatever. That's why the number is. Wisconsin's at 35. So you're taking a substantial 50% jump in terms of rushing talent of a team you're playing. When you go back to the other side, I was talking about the pass blocking. Wisconsin's number 22 in the country. So in both metrics, essentially, we're the best team you've played from an offensive line perspective. And why I say this, because again, all week I'm hearing, well, we haven't played a defensive line like this. We've played 2 defensive lines like this. You guys have not played an offensive line anywhere near this. And when you have, you haven't played them well. So that's why I look at this and I say, yeah, but like what about this week traveling to Wisconsin when you haven't done this against good lines all year? All of a sudden now it's just going to come alive for you. This is the game. Of all the games, we played 6 games already, but this game against Wisconsin, this is the one where we're going to be just shut down, dominant offensive line. I mean, you're not even the biggest line. We're like the 4th biggest line we've played this year. Like I just don't see where this dominance comes from. Now that said, take one big step back, Curtis. Don't get too hyped now. This is a good team. They're a strong team. They have good players. They have good athletes. This is absolutely going to be a tough game for us. We absolutely have to play our best game from an offensive line perspective. We absolutely have to hit the hole. We have to hit it hard when it's there. We absolutely have to make the right reads on RPOs. 100%. Again, It's not a bad Penn State team. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying they're not as good as they think they are. Nor
they're not
are they
number
as
3 in
good
the
as
country.
thinks
Good.
they are. No,
100%. All right, we're going to come back. I want to talk to you about that offense, right? We'll talk about that tight end that they have, the 2 running backs, the quarterback, offensive line we keep talking about a little bit, but specifically what on that offense scares you the most in this game? Because there are aspects there that we're talking about before the game or before the show. We both agree there's some things they can do that might be a little difficult to contend with. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers, but first, a quick break for our friends of the show. Also, a quick second, just say thank you to everybody tuning in. As always, really do appreciate you guys. Today's episode brought to you by our good friends over at Zybotics. Zybotics it's a pre-alcohol drink that is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It's invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, which happens to all of us occasionally. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's the blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this product down. Just remember to make Zybotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how it works. If you haven't used it, if you're interested, this is what you do. Step 1, you drink the pre-alcohol. Take that drink for best results. Make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to Zybotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more. Get 15% off your first order when you use code LockedOnCollege at checkout. Zybotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to Zybotics.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. Today's episode also brought to you by incredible friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real action on daily fantasy with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Billions with a B. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy accessible to all. You pick more or less with just 2 players with a shot to win more than 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long over on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action in over 30 different states, including California, Florida, Georgia, Texas. It is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy. And as a Niner fan, I could use that. Every player we have is dead or dying outside of Brock Purdy. So I could definitely use that insurance plan. Download the app today. Use code LockedOnCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your $5 lineup. That's Locked On College. Download the app. You go Locked On College, $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's jump back into the Penn State conversation here. Keep going with Curtis.
Sorry, man. The Locked On Nittany Lions host already in my mentions. No, sorry. So, what were you gonna say?
Let's talk. Because I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. I called a 27-24 Wisconsin win. I do think we win this game. I think there's things here that Penn State fans are overlooking. I think this program is being overlooked in general nationally. There are things that are worrisome in this game, though. Let's switch over to the Penn State offense. We talked about their defense a little bit. Let's switch over to that offense, specifically Tyler Warren, the tight end, who's incredible. You and I both love Nick Singleton, the running back. He's easily the better of their 2 running backs. We've agreed there. What about this offense? And obviously, offensive coordinator Cole Nicky coming over from Kansas is a big part of that. What about this offense scares you the most in this matchup?
Yeah, so I think there's really 3 players that we got to worry about for this game. And these 3 players are elite players. All the things I just said about Penn State not being championship level program, well, these 3 players, in my opinion, are championship level players. First off, you got to start with Tyler Warren. Obviously, dude had the game of the century last week versus USC. Now, he's been hot and cold. I mean, he's been some games where he's been held under 50 yards receiving. And then there's been, obviously, the USC game where he basically did everything for them, was essentially their whole offense. Honestly, without him in that game, they lose that game handedly. So he's the guy that you really have to be aware of where he is on the field, because a lot of times where he is on the field is going to dictate what they're going to run. This offense, Badger fans, if you haven't seen it, is supremely unconventional, right? They are doing things that I have never seen, never heard of. I don't even know if it's legal half the time. Like, I'm pretty sure there's going to be rules changed after this season with what they're doing on offense. Like, it's wild, right? It's just different. And Tyler Warren's a big piece of that, because he is kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy. He's a very athletic tight end. He's big. He's good at running routes. He's got great hands. And dude's a dog. I mean, he fights through tackles. Mm-hmm. He fights for the extra yard. I want to say it was a draw play, or either he was lined up as a wildcat quarterback or he was a fullback, and they gave it to him on like the 3-yard line against Illinois. And dude jumped like 7 feet in the air to like fly through the air into the end zone. It was crazy. Like, he's just an animal, right? So he's definitely someone that we have to know where he's at all times, because he can kill you. Another guy has been hampered by injury recently, Nick Singleton. I think by far their best running back. Dude is fast. Yeah. He's strong. He's a dog. He makes the right reads for the most part. He gets in the open space. He's dangerous. He runs through. He finishes tackles or finishes runs. And so he's a guy, again, if he gets in the open field, he gets around the edge, like, that's going to be a problem for us. He's a tough guy to bring down in space. He's been hampered with injury. They're saying he's healthy. I don't know. It's tough to know. I mean, you don't really know. I don't think the Penn State fans know if he's really 100% yet. He did play the whole USC game, and he didn't do a lot. So I don't know if it was, they don't want to use him because he's injured. I don't know if it was maybe the way USC was trying to take him out the game. I'm not quite sure. But he did play that whole game. So he'll be there. It's just, is he going to be utilized in the way I think he needs to be? Because he is a true workhorse running back. And then the last player.
Let me pause there. I want to talk about those two really quick before you get into your last one. On the Warren one, I think it's good for the Badgers that he had that enormous game from USC. They showed a lot of what they want to do with him, a lot of wrinkles with him. That's all on film. I think that's helpful for the Badgers preparing for this game. On Singleton, talking to some of the Penn State folks, they do think that the bye week got him pretty close to 100. He's probably 100%.
I would assume he's at 100 if I'm Wisconsin, right?
But he's probably pretty close to that. So, yeah, I would expect a pretty good version of Singleton in this game. And I agree with you. They have two running backs. A lot of people can always talk about their two guys, him and Allen, almost like they're not in the same tier. No. Like, Singleton's a different type
of guy. If they only had Kaytron Allen, I would 100% pick it upset Wisconsin. And I wouldn't really even.
Singleton's really good. Yeah. Agreed. All right. Go back. Yeah, keep going on your list. Sorry, I just want to throw
the last one. Honestly, is the most important. He's more important than both of them, and that's Drew Allar. Last year Drew Allar struggled. I don't think his offensive coordinator helped him out, Mike Yursich. I don't think he was helped with the offense they were trying to run there. I don't think he had a lot of confidence. He was trying to figure some things out. This year, you're seeing a different kind of guy. You're seeing a true 5-star talent. This dude can make every single throw on the field at any time, at any point. Watching him against USC, dude was bulleting passes 30 yards across the field, all the way on the opposite hash, just rifles. And they were on time. They were on the money, to the point where I kind of think that's part of why the receivers are dropping passes. He is rifling them things in there, but they are on target, on the money for the most part. He does make some head scratches at times. I mean, who doesn't? It's a college quarterback. But not only that, this dude's got heart. He's a gamer, right? He doesn't quit. He doesn't give up. He'll fight for the first down on his own if he has to. He'll put blocks in there because for some reason their offense has him blocking on the outside at times. I don't know what the hell their offense is. But he's the guy that makes it all go. And he's a gamer, and he's not going to be intimidated. He's not going to be, ready to write it in and write it off. He's going to be the reason they're in this game. If he has a bad game, I mean, he's had bad games in the past. I don't know if I see it, because I think no matter what happens, he's going to try to fight and claw back. Drew Allar truly is, in my opinion, he's a dog. And in fairness to what I just said about Penn State and the championship talk and whatnot, he's the guy that keeps them in pretty much every game they're in. Without him, Penn State would be, I think, lost in the wind. And so he truly is a great player, and he's someone that we're really going to have to make sure that we make life difficult on. And that's where I think you get into the points where I think Wisconsin might have some struggles, and that's pass rush.
Yeah. And Eller's a guy who he's not a dual threat, but he's more mobile than people give him credit for. He will get outside the pocket. He will take what's there. He's also a tough dude. He's got some of that Miller Moss in him where you can hit him a lot.
He's a big dude. He's 6'5", 230 something. Like, he looks it like kind of like.
He also doesn't make many mistakes. Like,
no, like I said, he's a smart player.
Last year was considered a struggle for him, but like he almost never turns the ball over, and he's pushed the ball downfield more this season. I agree with you. The offensive coordinator change has been good for him. He's a good quarterback, man. I think he's a little underrated in the conference by fans.
Yeah, and here's what I'll say. You mentioned something that I believe 110% is the reason why Penn State is ranked where they are so far this year, and that's Andy Kotelnicki. Andy Kotelnicki is a mad scientist in the truest term. I swear, dude is just drawing stuff on a napkin like the day of a game and saying, hey, man, just go here and you go here and you do this and you block this way. And then, boom, Warren is wide open with no one within 30 yards of him in any direction. Like, that's Kotelnicki. That's what he does. And he did that when he was at Kansas. He did that when he was at Buffalo. And guess when he did that? Wisconsin fans will know he did that at Whitewater. That's why Whitewater was so good all the time, right? And so you watch his offense, you watch the way they play. It's so multiple, it's so unorthodox that I want to say it's about 50% trick plays. I wouldn't call it because they would call that's what our offense is. So I don't really want to call it trick plays. But Badger fans, don't be surprised. You see some things you've never seen before. 2 linemen lined up way out wide outside the numbers, and like Tyler Warren taking snaps, and you see motion with the offensive lineman, and you see pass eligible offensive linemen who run down the field and block. Like, you're going to see some really crazy stuff that you didn't even know was legal, and you're going to see some times where there will be 1 or 2 players, maybe a wide receiver, maybe Nick Singleton, maybe Tyler Warren, wide open in the middle of the field, and you're going to want to rip your hair out. But that's just what Kotelnicki does. He schemes this stuff. It's crazy. Like, I've never seen anything like it. It's like you're running the triple option, but like with Tennessee's wide zone. Like, it doesn't make sense. But I think that's the whole point. I mean, it gets defenses out of position. Your matchups become weird because now you got Ricardo Hallman lined up on a pass eligible offensive lineman. Like, just weird things start to happen. Like, it's and that's where I think for us, if we're going to have success in that game, we have to get them behind the stick. Penn State lives or dies off these crazy plays that get just massive chunk plays. That's what they live or die off of. Because when they actually have to line up and play regular offense, regular 11 personnel, regular 22 personnel, they're not that good. Like, they're just not. They cannot. They don't own the line of scrimmage. I know people are saying, well, this is a great running tag. Their offensive line half the time doesn't look like it knows what it's supposed to do. And now maybe that's the nature of the fact that they're so multiple on offense. They got so many different looks, so many different variances, and they're decent at that pass blocking. They're not a bad pass blocking team, but they're not the best pass blocking team in the world. I do believe 100% Alabama's offensive line is way better than this team, even as bad as they've been playing. But when you watch them again, they're not dominant. They can't force the run. A lot of their short yardage plays are trick plays. They're quick screens on the outside. They're different misdirection looks. And that tells me that if you were truly a dominant offensive line like Wisconsin tries to be, 3rd and 1, you're just running the ball. Because you're a dominant offensive line. You're just going to run the ball. And that's what Wisconsin
does. With Singleton and Allen.
Especially with Singleton and Katron Allen.
And
that's what you do.
That's 6'5", 220.
But they don't do that.
They don't.
What does that tell you?
I'd say this. I think I agree with you on the offensive line. And also for Badger fans who maybe haven't seen a ton of Penn State, there's not a Jahan Dotson on this team. There's not a Robinson on this team. You think back to former past Penn State. I
mean, they could use Kieran Labrant Smith right now. I think he's like 7th in the SEC in passing receiver.
Like, they don't have one of those alpha dudes on the outside at receiver. They just don't this year. So it's the quarterback, the running back, and Tyler Warren. I mean, it's kind of, to your point, that's kind of what they got offensively. And then I feel like there's a bunch of pieces around them that aren't that scary. Are we going to take one quick break?
I was going to say, you go to the USC All-22 film, and I'm not even lying. At least 25% of the time, there was no wide receivers on the field. It would be Allar. It'd be their other Wildcat running back. It'd be Wildcat. Oh my God, the other quarterback that they use, number 9, Katron Allen, and then 2 tight ends and an extra offensive lineman. Like, and no wide receiver. That was like 25% of the time, and 50% of the time, at least, they have only 1 wide receiver on the field. Now, credit to Kotelnicki. I agree with him. I think that their strength of their team is those formations. Their tight ends. They have Jared Cross, Tyler Warren. Those guys are beasts. Okay, running backs. Not Kendra. He's on Auburn now. Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Those are better players, right? And so they get those guys on the field. They're a Wildcat quarterback. They can do a lot with him, right? So they get their best players on the field. But their wide receivers, I mean, they don't scare the back end of us at all in any way. And so, what Alabama did to beat us and what USC did to beat us, Penn State cannot replicate that. Alabama had Ryan Williams, it had Jermaine Bernard, Kendrick Law, and Jalen Milroe, who could freeze the defense in place. And this is when Jalen Milroe was playing at a Heisman level before he played Georgia and absolutely shredded them. That was when they were peaking. I don't know what happened to him. I think he's maybe concussed, injured, whatever. They do not look even remotely similar to what we played. You look at USC back when we were playing them. Again, I've said this last week. That was their last grasp at relevancy. They were in wounded animal mode, coming back off a loss from Michigan. If they wanted to be relevant, this was it. This was their last shot at relevancy. And Miller Moss played off his ass. Apologies for the poor language. We played off his ass. And their receivers were making highlight reel toe drags on 3rd and 15 against perfect coverage, right? Penn State can't do that. They can't. They don't have the people that are capable of doing that. And so that's where, again, you look at this Penn State team, they're hampered in a lot of different places. If Kolodnicki can get his offense doing what he wants it to do, that's where we run into issues.
No, I love it. And I agree. They cannot replicate what those other teams did on the edges 100%. I want to take one more quick break there. Come back, and we're going to talk about big picture. If Wisconsin wins this, what does that mean for Wisconsin? Does it mean 8 wins this year? Does it mean a possible path to 9? We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, a quick second for our friends of the show. I'm going to keep Curtis on for this one because he has a really good feel for this kind of thing. Today's episode brought to you by our great friends over at FanDuel, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook, Locked On Podcast, official sportsbook. Curtis, the line on this is 6.5. What does that line tell you? Because, again,
this line to me is screaming that. So here's the thing. There are multiple, there's a lot of different places you can power rate a team. Some of the ones that have been more accurate than not have us power rated right now with a home field adjustment at about a +2.5, right? And I'll shout out one national podcast, Josh Pate. His model, the model that he uses, which is relatively good, has us at a +3. Now, Josh Pate on his show said, I disagree with the model last week. I was wrong. I'm going against it again this week. I think Penn State covers. I completely disagree. I think that Vegas and FanDuel are a lot smarter than that. I think they know if we put a +6.5, that's not even a touchdown. Penn State's number 3 in the country. Wisconsin's unranked. This shouldn't even be a game. No one's watched Wisconsin since the Alabama game. So let them pick Penn State to cover at an 85% clip.
Yep.
Because
and that's really that's where all that public money is going to go. I bet you. I haven't looked. I usually look before.
It was at like 85 last I looked.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say I bet you 85% of the public is on Penn State, which tells you maybe go the other way. Over at Locked On, a great place to do it. Again, $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets over at FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. All right, Curtis, tell me this. Wisconsin beats Penn State this weekend. What's the big picture takeaway there? Is it a path to 8 wins?
So
9 wins?
If we beat Penn State, I think everything's on the table for us. I mean, we only have 1 loss in conference, right? So we still got all our goals essentially ahead of us. And it becomes how far can this team go? I would say that if we beat Penn State, a lot of questions are answered. A lot of critics within the Badger community are silenced. And it's proof of concept for this staff. It's a win that I think this program as a whole desperately needs to show that it's nationally relevant again. The only thing I can for sure guarantee with this football season is that we get to a bowl game because we'll have 6 wins at that point. And you know what? That's good. This team needs that. We need the practices. We're a very young team. We're a team that is growing, is still finding itself, is still trying to become what we think this team is capable of. And, we're going to have some confidence going into Iowa next weekend. They get to play the one, the only, the most feared team in this entire conference, at least the Western half, Northwestern this week. So who knows? But it'll be definitely, I think, a boost that's much needed. I think it can propel us forward into the future of college football on a high note. We have one of the biggest recruiting weekends in the history of our team this weekend. And so that goes a long way there. I think that helps us tremendously with those players. It shows us that we're here to stay.
You're dead on. I'm going to do a show probably tomorrow, but this is a massive recruiting weekend. A massive recruiting. A bunch of committed kids are on campus. A bunch of 26s and 27s are on campus. This is a massive weekend. I think if you beat Penn State, before the year I said, 2 of my goals this year. 2 of my goals. At least 7 wins, right? I think you have to match what you did last year. And in one of these big moments, you have to kind of seize it. Whether that doesn't necessarily mean you have to win one of these, but you have to play a great game against a Penn State, an Oregon, or an Alabama, or a USC. And so far, we're 0-2 in that. Like, you can say how USC it is. We're 0-2 in those big moments. I think this is an opportunity where you can win this. You can show nationally you're going to raise some eyeballs. You're going to help recruiting. You're going to help build excitement, which helps build NIL. It helps build everything. So I think if you win this, I think you get to 8 wins, which at the beginning of the year, I would have said that's a tremendously successful year or 2 of Luke Fickell. If you can get to 8 wins, you win one of these big games. Yeah, I think it opens the door.
I think if we beat Penn State, we get at least 9 because I look at the rest of the teams on the schedule. I'm going to tell you this right now. Iowa, That was the most uncharacteristic Iowa game I've ever seen last week. They could not tackle in space. That's exactly what we're going to do to them. We're going to spread them out in space. Their starting corner is fine. Their second corner behind their starter is decent, and then behind that they have no one. And I'm confident that they don't have.
We assume they lose to Oregon, right?
And then I was going to say Oregon. That's a different level than Penn State.
I think we beat Nebraska.
Nebraska's not good at all.
But I'm not convinced we go into Kinnick and beat. I'm not convinced we go into Kinnick and beat Iowa though. That's the one where
I'll say that it's going to be a close game no matter what happens because it's Iowa, and I'm curious as to where the headspace of this team is because that team, another in my opinion, semi-delusional fan base, thought they were going to the playoffs. On what? I have no idea. Like I don't know why they thought that, but they thought that. To me, that team screams 2022 Wisconsin. You had a generational defense. You lose half of it. We'll just move this thing around and try to change our offense, even though not really changing our offense, and we'll run with Caleb Johnson, aka Braylon Allen, and we'll just figure it out with a quarterback who's maybe questionable at best at times, and it's gonna work out, and it's not. And so it's like I look at this team like I don't know where their head's at. It's gonna be a tough game because it's Iowa, Wisconsin. I mean, it always is. At Oregon, like I said, I think Oregon's playing a different level than Penn State, than Wisconsin, than any of these teams not named Ohio State. I think they're up at the top. I think they should be up at the top. And then you look at a Nebraska. Nebraska, their defense is so slow. It is slow. It is as slow as Rutgers, if not slower. Like they are not it. I'm sorry, they're not good. And then again, homeboy, he's a freshman, and now he's got a 5 interception game. And we all know what happened to Mertz after he had a 5 interception game as a freshman. Things went downhill real quick. And now you got everybody asking questions. I don't think Satterfield's a good OC. So Nebraska, I'm no longer even remotely concerned about them. Minnesota's a team that I hate to give them a little bit of props, but they're a tougher team than I thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year. I'll say this. I think PJ does a really good job of bringing in guys who believe in who he is. I don't think I would ever touch any of those players if I was Wisconsin or ever bring any of them into our program at all. They're probably all weirdly greasy and, just kind of off in general, but they believe in Pete. They believe in PJ Fleck. They believe in his culture. And because of that, they play well together. So credit to them on figuring whatever that is out. But they're a difficult team. I think that they're going to come in. They're going to want to destroy our season. They have a good pass efficiency defense. They've played well against some of these other teams. So they're a team that could be a sneaky game at the end of, they're a team that's going to be a sneaky, tough task at the end of the year. They know who they are and they play to it. So, that one to me is actually a little bit more of a challenge as I look forward than a Nebraska or, potentially even Iowa, depending on how they play this weekend. Again, I don't know what Iowa's at. So it'll be interesting to see.
But we got to see how this Penn State game goes too. Because there's a lot of scenarios where this could go in a couple different directions, and that's really going to dictate as we start talking about what happens at Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota.
For sure.
We have to wrap it there. He is the great Curtis coming off a really strong little string of predictions here. Kind of having a good feel on this team. I love it. That's because he goes back, he watches films, he rewatches games. That's why we always love to get the insight on here. For everybody tuning in, thank you so much. This has been Locked On Badgers. Go check out the Locked On Big Ten show for all the biggest news in the conference on the Locked On Podcast Network. And we will bunch more content coming up, 2 or 3 shows coming up in the next couple days. So definitely stay tuned on Wisconsin. We'll talk later.